Well, you know, the most decorative thing in your home is you, especially if you're wearing a fantastic apron like Joe and I are. And so we're going to show you how to make this really cool gear apron, right?
True, true. Now, I love tools, and I have a software tool that allows me to take any shape and turn it into a symmetrical design, a kaleidoscope or a pinwheel. So I started out with an inspirational photo, and it was actually this sign that had all those gears on it, and then I kind of cropped in and just got the gears that I'd like, loaded it in the software, and now the cool thing is I can turn this into any kaleidoscope. And over on the right,
it totally has like that steampunk look or something like that. It's really industrial and graphic. I like it.
You can always see what you're going to end up with over there on the right-hand side. You can move it around. I actually just play with the software sometimes because it's so pretty. And look how cool. You never know what you're going to get. That's the cool part of it, right? So because I wanted the gear shape on the apron, I looked at the gear itself, and I looked for another photo, and I found a file that looked like a gear. Now, this particular gear has 6 spokes, so I think it makes sense to create a file that has 6 or 12 segments. And I can do that right over here by just choosing the type of thing I want, how many segments I'm interested in. That kind of narrows it down. And I knew I wanted a circle, so I'm just going to do a circle with 12 segments.
Because obviously 6 goes into 12 twice, so then
right, and you can line it up when we put the gear onto the apron. Now, the interesting thing here is although this software can make all kinds of shapes, and you've seen a whole bunch of them in this palette, just because that's the shape you get doesn't mean that's the shape you have to use, because with an electronic cutting machine, you can cut any shape that you want. So let me show you the finished image. And there it is. Now, it's a circle there, and I can actually print it out in any size. I've got a large example here, and this is printed on heat transfer vinyl.
You know what's so cool is I never would have realized this was gears when I first looked at it. I mean, obviously, I can see them now because I know it's gears, but I think when I first looked at it, I just thought it was a really cool design, you know?
Yeah, and the cool part here is because it's on heat transfer vinyl, it means we can move it to a fabric and adhere it permanently. And in this case, we're using heat transfer vinyl for dark fabric. It'll work much better with a cutting machine than HTV, heat transfer vinyl, for light fabric. So I've got a smaller one of those.
I know, I've got a smaller one of those actually right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and put that on the mat. And while I'm doing that, I know that you're gonna send me that gear file that you had, right? So that I can actually cut this out, which is pretty cool. So you're gonna send that on over to me, and I'm gonna go ahead and just load this into my electronic cutting machine. And the first thing that I wanna do actually is I'm gonna go and I'm gonna grab that file that you've sent. And now what I think is really cool is, just like you said, just because this is a circle doesn't mean we're actually gonna end up with a circle. Because what we're gonna be able to do is we're gonna be able to scan in the image and then place that gear so it lines up with those 6 cylinders, just as you said. Or not cylinders, 6 sides, 6 pieces, 6 something like that. Math was never my strong suit. And then we're gonna go ahead and cut that out. So while I am doing the scan here, I think you'll be able to see it on the screen right there. And now I can just go ahead and I can grab that gear and I can place it there. And now if I want, of course, I can zoom way in, and the perfectionist in me can take some time to go ahead and play around with it. But you know me, I like to craft wildly and just hang out. And it looks fine to me, so I'm just gonna say, okay, cut and start, and boom, that is gonna cut that gear shape out of that material. Now, while that's cutting, you're gonna show us the next step.
So once that's all cut out, this is what you actually have for your piece of vinyl, and we're gonna weed it. And weeding just means taking away the parts that you don't want. And because we kiss cut the vinyl, just cut the very top layer, I'm able to peel away the parts we don't want, and it's going to leave all the rest right on the backing.
Cool.
How cool is that?
I love it because it's like you suddenly revealing something. It feels like, you know, something from nothing. Even though I know I've done the work, somehow I find weeding to be enormously satisfying because all of a sudden you have this amazing shape.
Exactly, exactly. Now I need to get this shape from here over to the fabric. So I've got clear transfer tape. And the best part about clear transfer tape is I can see exactly how to align it to get my whole gear on there. Press that down, and transfer tape, you know, don't use it once and throw it away. You can use it over and over and over again.
I save mine. That's why I save the backing paper always so that I can use it again and again and again.
So I'm going to peel this off, and you can see now parts of the other gear are coming. And this, when you peel it from the back of the transfer tape, that's called reverse weeding.
Oh, because I was going to say, I was wondering why you didn't take out all those little pieces before, but now I can see it's actually, in a weird way, it's actually easier to take it out now, because instead of burnishing the whole thing, what you did is you just stuck it to the outside, and now those other shapes are kind of pulling out pretty easily.
Exactly.
And anything that's left, which I can see it is, you can definitely, and I actually sometimes find that what I'll do, may I steal this from you?
Yes, go ahead.
Is if I see a little crack, I'll bend it, that's the first thing, and then I can usually take my stylus tool, I can get up under there, and I can get out anything else there may be. And the same is true for any other spots you see that you want. One more right there. Oh baby, I'm gonna go right after that one. And again, bending it, that lets the crack come up, and then you can go ahead and you can grab it just like that. Pretty cool.
Perfect, perfect. I'm gonna go over and start to apply this to our fabric.
Okay, go for it. So now, is there anything we need to know about ironing on onto the fabric? Are there any special things you have to do? Do you have to use a pressing sheet? What are the rules, Joe?
What are the rules? And you know, I'm not very rule-based, but we want to put your iron on the cotton setting and then be sure that it's warmed up. So give it a couple minutes to really warm up. And it's a dry iron, of course. First thing you want to do is just iron your material to make sure there's no wrinkles in it, there's no lumpy bumpies.
And actually that kind of preheats it too, so that it's going onto a warm surface.
Now I'm putting the heat transfer vinyl right on there. And a common mistake is I'm so excited, I go ahead and iron right on top, and it still has the transfer tape.
Oh, I might have done that before.
We want to be sure that we take the transfer tape off and just leave the vinyl itself. And this can be a little bit tricky because it's really sticky, and it doesn't want to come off the transfer tape onto the fabric, because the fabric doesn't adhere the vinyl as well as the transfer tape. But with a little bit of working, we're going to be able to get it off. Now, in the meantime, I think we should make a stamp to put on the bottom of the apron.
Yeah, because if we look at the finished apron for just a second, what you can see is not only is there obviously the gear at the top in the center, but down at the bottom, there's all these beautiful sort of ghosty stamped images. So what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to go ahead and just take off this piece that we cut before, and I'm going to be able to take this silicone stamp material. Now it has two sides of plastic on it, and I'm going to go ahead and remove one of the sides. I'm going to put the side down that I removed the plastic from right against the mat and just press it down with my hands. Then I'm going to go ahead and open up the machine, and I'm simply going to load my mat in. The next step is I want to scan in that stamp material, because I want to make sure that I'm going to be placing my stamp so it actually cuts, of course, on the stamp material and not somewhere on the mat. So, and the cool thing I think is that you can scan it in and you can actually see the clear material. And if you can't see the clear material, there's a little icon here to allow me to do it. Now, Joe, you're holding that iron down for quite a long time, right?
Yeah, you want to hold it down with both hands and put some of your body weight behind it and spend about 20 seconds in each spot, and then don't shift or slide the iron. When we're all done with this 20-second piece, we're going to lift the iron up vertically, move it to a new spot, back down again for 20 seconds. And I'm doing this on a piece of parchment paper. You could use something like a pillowcase or a thin piece of fabric as well.
And if you iron carefully, one of the things that I think is so cool is this is completely, you can put it in your washer, in your dryer, it's durable, all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm just putting in a bigger blade now that I'm cutting my stamp, and I've upped my pressure slightly, and I'm conserving my stamp material. I've moved my gear right to where I need it to be, and I'm gonna go ahead and press start, and now we're gonna cut out our stamp. And if you look over here, you can see that we've gone ahead and we have in fact cut out two stamps, one big and one small. So we're just repeating the same design over and over again. Anytime you use repetition, it's one of those design elements that really helps bring the eye around and just really enforces something beautiful and artistic. So think about that. Whenever you have a shape, try to use it multiple times in the same way. So how's it going with the ironing, Joe?
I have finished applying it.
Bring it on over.
Now,
let's take a peek.
We could have done this right on the iron, or we actually could do it like this as an applique and then apply it to something.
You mean right on the apron?
Right on the apron.
There you go. I was thinking, are we ironing something to the iron? That got confusing.
I'm so not used to ironing. That's my problem. That's my problem.
You know, the first time I got an iron, it was purely for quilting. I've never ironed my clothes. I can't lie.
So now that we have this on, in this case, a piece of fabric, but your apron as well, we can use your stamps that you're making that match this and stamp right on the fabric. And we can use a fabric paint or just an acrylic paint. Apply the paint with a brayer.
So the difference between a fabric paint and acrylic paint, because I think people always wonder about that, is they're actually the same. They're usually both acrylic, but a fabric paint is going to go ahead and be soft and supple after you wash it, whereas an acrylic paint is going to be a little tough. With an apron, for instance, this is painted with fabric paint because it was the whole thing and I wanted it to be soft. But if you're using an acrylic paint, maybe if it's just a small area, I think it's totally fine to just use that and you don't worry about it.
You blinged it up.
You know, you've always got to have a little bit of bling. Actually, I think a gear is kind of a different version of bling because it's metal and it's shiny and it has that whole vibe.
Yeah, and you could even put gears inside of all those little dots and combine both worlds.
You could.
How cool would that be?
You could. And I can see that our stamp is almost done cutting. And as soon as it's done, we can simply, and just if you would mind explaining how you got the paint on, that would be great.
Well, in this case, I applied a little bit of the paint inside this plastic tray, added it to the brayer, and then put it on the stamp.
So you just brayer directly over the stamp, and that's how you apply it, and then you can go ahead and you can print it.
Short little strokes in your paint, so you get the paint evenly across the whole brayer, and then onto your stamp itself, and then either flip that onto the fabric or put the fabric on top of the stamp.
And
look at that.
There's our gear stamp.
How cool is that?
Pretty cool.